Hi there and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for this discussion around the publication of Makambe K Simamba's Dora Award winning play, Our Father's Sons, Lovers, and Little Brothers. I'm going to introduce this fabulous playwright first. So, according to her bio, which gets longer and longer by the minute, Makambe K Simamba is a Dora Award winning playwright and actor for Our Father's Sons, Lovers, and Little Brothers. Other plays include a Chitenge story, a Drum Major Instinct trilogy, Makambe Speaks, and MUD. Select acting credits include A Chitenge Story, Invisible, Giant, Bea, Winners and Losers, and SIA. She is the 2020-2021 Urja Kureda Artist in Residence at Tarragon Theatre. She recently co-directed Invisible 2 at the University of Lethbridge and is a resident member of the artist-run theater company ARC. Makambe is proudly Zambian, and her intention is to be of service to her community through her ability to tell stories. She is based between Calgary and Toronto, and we are so lucky to have her here to discuss her play that just hit the shelves recently. I'm very honored to be part of this discussion because I am the former artistic director of Be Current Performing Arts, which produced the show back in 2018. And again, as mentioned in her bio, it garnered 2 Dora Awards for her performance and for Outstanding New Play in the Young Audiences division. And I'm so very, very proud of how far she's come. And I just cannot wait to see where her star will rise from here. So welcome, Makambe. It is so lovely to have you here. You know what really, really what really astounds me right now is the fact that this play is such a difficult subject matter, and yet the way that you handled it, the storyline, it really allowed audiences to really sit with you with that grief, and that they were open to such a place of both sadness and joy, and a lot of it had to do with the beauty of your words and the beauty of her performance. First, can you tell me a little bit about, for our audiences who are mostly theater academics, can you tell me a little bit about the play in your own words? And also, I would like to hear about what the inspiration was behind it.
Sure. Thank you. First of all, thanks for that beautiful introduction. Taking this time to be able to speak with you. So, Our Father's Sons, Lovers, and Little Brothers is a solo show that I wrote and performed, and I'm so excited to share with the world in print. And it explores the first moments of afterlife of a 17-year-old boy who is walking home one night and doesn't make it home. This play is about Trayvon Martin and everybody who he represents, past, present, and future. And the play explores his journey of processing what has just happened to him in his death from the 17-year-old Black boy in Florida perspective, whatever that means. So I use that question as to, with the knowledge that Trayvon Martin is credited or acknowledged for starting a movement, which is the Black Lives Matter movement. I know that we as adults often look at him as this martyr and this figure, but I wanted to explore what it would actually be like from his own psychology and him having to process a death that he didn't choose, regardless of what we in the real world have made of it ever since. And so that was kind of the inspiration for the piece. And at the time that Trayvon passed away, my little brother was the exact same age. They were born a week apart. And so it hit me in a way that, it hit me in a way that I was actually staring at an empty seat at my dinner table and reckoning with the fact that, like, that could be my family. So that compelled me to write and explore, and over a journey of like lots of exploration and movement, explorations and writing and traveling, I came up with Our Father's Sons, Lovers, and Little Brothers.
In this day and age when so many lives are reduced to just a hashtag, what I loved so much about the play is this idea of giving humanity to a person behind the headlines. Um, and what I find really interesting, and well, not interesting, but what I find tragic with regards to white supremacy is that, even though there is a person that has passed away at the hands of white supremacy, is that the way that white supremacy works is that we're just going to be focusing on the perpetrator, but not on the humanity of the person who has just died. Um, so tell me about that. Tell me about while researching for this play, the humanity that you learned about your character as you were committing it to the page.
Sure. I think that's a really excellent point, Catherine, that the humanity of these people is often lost. And I feel like sometimes these names become parts of like political arguments. And though those arguments about defunding the police and the whole system are super, super important, at the end of the day, a name, no matter who it belongs to, is representative of an entire life. So it really breaks my heart that, when we see Black folks who have died, especially Black folks who have been murdered to white supremacy, we see their names as hashtags. We remember them for the deaths they didn't choose more so than the lives that they lived and the things that might have brought them joy. So within this piece, it was really important for me to explore and connect with in whatever way I could, like what what was this young person interested in? And also, what does it mean to be 17? That's a
Mhm.
really that's a really special and beautiful age where like there's like a huge wave of like new independence and what feels like maturity. Um, but also you're still a child. And so it made me I asked myself questions like, like other than his family, what is the thing or what are the things that he might have been most sad to say goodbye to, whether that might have been like a girlfriend or a prom date or a video game or memories with friends or siblings. I wanted to sort of piece together all of these different things that become a life. So my process for that, part of my research included Trayvon's parents wrote a really powerful and heartbreaking book called Rest in Power that explained basically the event of his murder into like the events following, which was a really good starting place to start to place this human being within the context of a family and a loving family at that. I also traveled to the US and I visited a couple of places that I was called. I visited Ferguson, Missouri, um, which is where Michael Brown was murdered. And I went to pay respects there. I went to Montgomery, Alabama, and like, yeah, with sort of a similar intention. I just wanted to pay respect. And also, I feel like, I mean, everywhere, but I feel like specifically in these places that I was going, like the ghosts were speaking to me. And so I felt like it was kind of important to sort of tap into that energy. And then at the end of that voyage, I went to Sanford, Florida, where Trayvon was killed. And I wanted to be able to actually physically see some of the things that he saw because I thought that that would give me a sense of connection as well as a sense of respect, because I recognize that as a Zambian born, Caribbean raised Black Canadian, I have a
Mhm.
particular experience, and my experience and Trayvon's experience are connected in many ways, but there are also things that I don't know about the experience and the surroundings and the energy of the place where he grew up and lived his life. So I wanted to sort of be able to articulate the way in which I found access to that story in a way that felt aligned with my spirit and my ancestors, and in a way that felt respectful, um, and also in a way that felt guided and rich. because I would love for my intention with this piece is that if you watch the play or if you read the play, most people know the name Trayvon Martin, but most people don't really know anything about his life. They
Yes,
only know about his death, and he's way more than that.
absolutely. Was there anything that in this journey that you had gone on for research that surprised you?
A few things. I was surprised by when I went and visited the gated community where Trayvon was murdered. I was surprised by how pretty it was. Like the grass was like green, like an Instagram filter, and there was like a duck pond and a pool and a gym. And that's just not the narrative that I think the media sort of played out about where he was killed. It
Mhm.
surprised me a lot because it looked like the type of neighborhood where I was like, oh, I could see, I don't know, for example, the single mom picking up that extra job so that her kids could live here. Because if I were to walk by and not have any context, I'd be like, oh, this is safe. So safe. There's even a gate. But
Yes,
yeah, I was really humbled by how, if you're living in a Black body, you have to be ready for the fact that there might not be a safe space.
yes.
That was probably the biggest surprise. The other surprises were kind of like, that feeling or that energy of like things sort of falling into place. There was a string of sort of, I don't think coincidences are a thing, but there was just a sense of like guidance that I felt like I should turn right here. I should go here at this point. I should um, go and speak to this person, ask this person a question. I remember being in Ferguson, and just the way that I got there was wacky. I just don't know what I was planning, but I just felt like I had to go. And so my beautiful cousin, Gosa, he drove me there. He lives in Kansas City. So we drove 4 hours to Ferguson. And I remember not even knowing how to explain the fact that I felt like I needed to go.
Mhm.
And luckily, he's a person who said, you don't even have to explain it to me. So we went and we toured the city with some friends of his who turned out had actually grown up there. So seeing the perspective of um, Black folks who had lived in the area and remembered the events and were out there on the streets that night and were very connected in terms of community in those events was like a really, I don't know if surprising is the right word, but it was like really humbling to sort of connect with like other human beings who are so much like you and me, um, but are, because of this particular context and because of the way that the media and white supremacy treats Black bodies, end up in horrible situations. So I was just like, yeah, I guess here it is. The surprising thing was like these neighborhoods, these American neighborhoods where all of these terrible things happen, don't energetically feel too different from the Canadian neighborhoods that we think are much more of a sanctuary. Hmm.
Yes. I want to bring up your intentions during the production and how they differ from it now being in print. Is that I remember in our discussions around the production was that you had told me that the Black Lives Matter movement was most definitely for non-Black people because Black people understand that their lives matter,
Yes.
and that the production was going to be a place of where we were centering the much needed grief and mourning and joy of the Black community, and that's what we sort of centered the entire, like everything from like our front of house experience to our education matinees, everything around that.
Hmm.
Now that it's in print and it'll be in the hands of people in which we can't control what their experiences are around it. Like, tell me about what your intentions are now with it now being in this format. What do you imagine in your head will happen with that experience?
Well, as you mentioned, like the Black community was at the center of who the story was for. Black youth specifically is at the center of that. It always felt important for me for this character, this figure, to tell his own story to people his own age,
Mhm.
because they're 100% the future.
Mhm.
Catherine, something that I learned recently, I was mentoring a young student in Calgary. Just brilliant, Black girl magic out the wazoo. I was like, when will you be taking over? Don't forget about me. Um, yes. And so, like, yeah, in some of that work and mentoring that I've done, I've mentioned Trayvon's name, and not everybody knows who he is,
Mhm.
because the young people who are 15 and 16 now, Trayvon was killed in 2012. That's 9 years ago. So if you're 15 or 16 now, it's very possible that you actually don't know who launched our movement.
Mhm.
So I mean, in the context of print, the main overarching intention is still to connect with Black youth,
Mhm.
whether that be just the one Black student in the theater school class in the middle of the prairies, me, even if it's within the spaces where Black bodies are still experiencing isolation, that's still a priority for me. Print excites me because I feel like you can send it places and there's like a different
Yes.
accessibility to it. I would love for this play to be looked at with the same excitement and enthusiasm and respect by non-Black folks that they look at Shakespeare with. Like, read it with the same eyes.
Mhm.
Like, give yourself a couple of days to let it soak in. Read it 5 times to make sure that you get the meaning. Research
Mhm.
the references that you don't know. Um, Print makes me excited because I feel like there are a lot of possibilities for other people to connect at a pace that maybe might suit them. And I just want, I don't want this story to be forgotten. And I'm humbled by the fact that there's still so much learning to do, both within our own community in terms of just like teaching our young folks the history. But I also look forward for all of the allies to be able to engage with the story and take whatever they will from it. It's not my priority to like, I'm not writing for white folks. But if white folks are like, yes, I'm down and I would like to read and engage, like that's totally always welcome. So I'm excited about all of those possibilities.
I'm excited for it too. Just because, yeah, as you said, books have no borders. So I'm really excited to see who gets to have their hands on this really important play and experience it for themselves. And that said too about talking about borders. I mean, what is it like right now for you during this time of such chaos with the pandemic, and how the pandemic really almost like it really magnified all of our isms. You know, when
Mm,
resources are short, it's amazing how quickly many of us are to claim what we believe is ours. And then you see like where all of our where we can do better, most definitely with our beliefs. And especially with the uprisings that happened last year, like obviously culminating from years and years of work for the Black Lives Matter movement. What is it like for you right now as now a published playwright? What has this experience been amidst the chaos?
hmm. I'm going to answer this question in two parts. The first is that my relationship with the script, or my understanding of how the script exists in the world, has two chapters. One is pre George Floyd and one is post George Floyd. I felt that a lot of folks felt that non-Black folks um, received Our Father, Sons, Lovers, and Little Brothers as like, oh man, that's terrible. Can't believe that happened. But there's something about this particular chapter of our history where we all watched an awful 8-minute video of somebody being executed. May he rest. There's something different about that. I had always said that this play is centered around the story of Trayvon, my interpretation and explorations and curiosities, and honoring of what I can connect to of that, who he represents. And so I think the idea of who Trayvon represents has grown in people's minds in a way that is different than um, before the pandemic and before Black Lives Matter reignited as the response to the killings of people like George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery. Hmm. Can you repeat the question again, Catherine? I just want to make sure I
About
answered it
what? No, no,
properly.
I mean, I guess, like,
What is it
because
like
of the
for
chaos. Yeah,
now?
because it's so funny,
Yeah.
like, if I was speaking to another person about what has it been like being an author during this chaotic time, I'm sure that the focus would have been like, "Oh my god, like, it's so hard being here in my house all the time and not getting to go to events and blah, 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 blah." I think the context is so vastly different for your
Sure.
case because of the fact
Yes.
that what the pandemic has really showed us is that there is no vaccine from racism. There is no vaccine from transphobia and classism. And so, given that context, what
Mhm.
does that mean releasing this very important work into the world?
What the pandemic has amplified for me is like a sense of purpose. And I broke up with a lot of people, friends, mentors, even like spiritual teachers. I just came up with some really strong non negotiables that had to do with myself, my community, what integrity looks like, and what I feel like liberation is. I don't think it's my job to make everybody think that my life matters. If folks don't think that Black Lives Matter, then that's between them and their God or them and their whatever it is that they resign to. But what changed for me is like I became crystal clear about what I think is important, who I think is important, both in terms of folks that I know personally, for example, like family relationships and friendships, but also in terms of who I look at, I guess, like sort of in the public eye, people who I feel connected to or I feel aware of because of maybe like the media, who I can't touch, but I feel like I can touch, or I feel like I have to become really, really cognizant of. The pandemic reminded me of how scared I am for my brother's life. Um, a side effect of the pandemic is that like I came to my mother's house, so I'm in my family's house now, which is like an incredible blessing that I have a safe space and a happy family to sort of quarantine with. I didn't think we'd still be here a year later, but um in my mother's house, my younger brother still lives there, and he worked the entire time during the pandemic. And I would have incredible anxiety every time he left the house, to the point that I instituted a mandatory hug policy
Oh.
because I just needed to. I just, I still don't even have words for it. I just needed to hug him because I kept being so paranoid of like it was the last time that I would see him. And I don't want to wish that or like manifest that, but I mean, at the same time, like exactly what you said, there is no vaccine for racism. I don't know what's going to happen, when he walks out the door. So I really, really felt a sense of like, okay, this is a time to pause. There are a lot of privileges that I've had over the pandemic in terms of like, I've been able to hang out with my family. My family is really nice to me. I've been able to have enough resources to have my basic needs met. So, with those privileges that I acknowledge, I decided to go, okay, what can we take from this time that, like, or like, what is the lesson of this time rather? Right. Because I feel like I don't want to like encourage like a positivity when people aren't in that place. I think it's okay to be bummed out, but I still think it's okay and important to acknowledge what privileges are, so that like a conversation that I was having was like, okay, then like, what are we doing with this work moving forward? And I feel like I was intentional before, but now I feel even more crystal clear about what work that I want to do and what I'm willing to do in order to tell that story. So I feel like it's been a really tough time, but it really clarified my intention and it clarified my power. Because what I noticed was there was a way that now I felt like there was an awareness of Makambe, because it's like, oh yeah, Makambe actually used to talk about this stuff X amount of years ago. And so it seems like it's just been an interesting ways which like the world has sort of shifted around me. And I feel even more passionate and loving and angry and just like ready to do the work. And for me, the work is writing and acting and art. So Our Fathers for me is a really big part of doing the work, and it's not always easy, but I think that's probably the biggest thing I've learned in the pandemic. Like, how are we moving forward? Why are we moving forward? What's the most important? And to see that reflected back to me, even in really hard things, has been really clarifying.
Oh, Makambe, I am so grateful for you. I'm grateful for this work, and I'm grateful that Playwrights Canada Press is publishing it so that people around the world can receive your gifts firsthand. Thank you so much for this conversation. I'm extremely proud of you, over the moon proud of you. And now, all of you who are at home viewing this video, you now get to view an excerpt performed by Makambe K Simamba herself from her play, Our Fathers, Sons, Lovers, and Little Brothers. Thank you for joining us.
Our Fathers, Sons, Lovers, and Little Brothers by Makambe K Simamba. The last inhale. A 17-year-old Black boy in a hoodie appears. What just happened? I'm hot. I'm wet. God? The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. I haven't been to church in a minute. I just thought I'd slip in a little insurance. Are y'all here for Judgment Day? Is God on Black people time? There should be like a step-by-step instruction manual, or a large book appears. The boy approaches the book and reads. Your journey to the ancestors. The book glows and inscribes itself. A step-by-step instruction manual. Open me. Mm-mm. The boy walks away from the book. Grandma appears. Baby, you stand on the shoulders of the ancestors who chose you to represent them in this moment. Open it. Grandma, aren't you the one who used to force me to go to church? Where is God? And why do I have to? That sperm hit that egg and you were no mistake. Did you just say sperm? Grandma. The boy looks at the book. Well, God is actually kind of savage. Have you read the Old Testament? He turned a bitch into salt just for looking back. I got another one. God is so savage. You're supposed to say, how savage is he? God is so savage. Okay, so he hollers at his homeboy and tells him to spend like 2 entire months building this huge ass fucking boat. Then he makes him scour the whole earth, gathering all the animals, like 2 of each one and shit, just to be like, I'm gonna make it flood, flood, flood. And it's like, dude, you had the power to make it flood, but you didn't have the power to build your own boat? God is so savage. So it's like a Tuesday morning a couple thousand years ago, right? And God calls up his friend Abraham, right? And he's like, hello, is it me you're looking for? I'm kidding. That was bad. So he's like, hey, it's me, Lord. Yeah, nigga, what's good? Yeah, okay. How's work? Cool. How's your wife? Okay, cool. How's your only son? I'm gonna need you to sacrifice him. Click. And so Abraham takes his fucking kid, drags the little nigga up a mountain, puts him down on like an altar or some shit, lifts up this huge ass rock, and just as he's about to smash his head into 1,000 tiny pieces, God be like, just kidding. And Abraham's just like, and then God didn't say nothing else. Savage. Ancestors all the way. He opens the book.